Okay, so I'm going to try and do an initial sort of first read of this in linear fashion. So the first read is you got Bob-omb Battlefield, Worms Fortress, Jolly Roger Lagoon, Bay, Jolly Roger Bay. I don't know what it is now. Cool Cool Mountain, Big Boo's Haunt, Hazy Maze, Cave, Lethal Lava Land. So immediately I'm interested in Big Boo's Haunt because Big Boo's Haunt is sort of seems to act as an entryway to the next part of the castle. Now, the next part of the castle, so this section here, these 4 levels, excuse my brush strokes, are the underground. This is the underground of the castle. I'm intrigued, of course, because the underground is sort of a spooky place. You know, there's torches, there's fire torches, and it's dark and musky, and it's dripping and wet, and sort of an underground cellar is always like a scary place, right? In a Frankenstein movie or something like that. And of course, excuse me, it gets preceded by Big Boo's Haunt, which is a level about scary places. So the scary place leads you to the scary place. Not only that, but Big Boo's Haunt has a cellar itself, right? So maybe I could use this part here. So you got Big Boo's Haunt is this like house or whatever. And Big Boo's Haunt has different places inside of it, one of which appears to be, within the architecture of the level, appears to be this drop that takes you into an underground section. And in this underground section, you meet one of the incarnations of Big Boo. I think there are other Big Boos you meet on the roof. I think you meet several Big Boos. But we do know that you meet a Big Boo in the underground of the castle. So this is interesting because, of course, this is the level, Big Boo's Haunt, right? This is the level that is most directly evoking the idea of an underground cellar section to a castle. I mean, Big Boo's Haunt isn't a castle, but it's a sort of imposing sort of mansion of some kind. It's sort of an imposing structure. So that's like the most literal depiction we get of whatever it is that maybe Peach's castle might be, is like a sort of Western style architectural construction with an underground and a rooftop and different levels and so on. And just after we get this depiction, we enter the underground of the actual castle, the 4 levels in the underground, which are the 4 levels of the underground of the castle. So, why, right? What's happening here? I guess one thing that may be interesting is that the previous levels, the previous 4 levels before Big Boo's Haunt, aren't super literal depictions of castles in this way. Worms Fortress is a fortress. It is sort of a castle in some way. It has a stranger sort of shape and weirder architecture. But yeah, Worms Fortress is indeed some sort of a castle. In fact, let's go straight into high weirdness and explore, excuse this, okay, let's explore, I'm going to make this space again, this thing. I'm intrigued in the ways in which you could organize these levels. So immediately something seems to appear here as a possibility, which is Worms Fortress is a fortress. So it is some sort of a castle. Big Boo's Haunt is also perhaps some sort of a castle. Shifting Sandland features not a castle, but it features the pyramids, which are, and you enter the pyramids. The pyramids inside are indeed some sort of a temple governed by Irok. So we have a king to this castle, the pharaoh, the king who rules. I mean, I don't know if it's the pharaoh, but you know what I mean, like some sort of a big presence, like Big Boo or King Womp or Princess Peach, who governs this. So it is not just a tomb for dead people. It is not just a temple. It is also, I think, some sort of a castle ruled by a ruler. In this case, this is the ruler of the castle, a big architectural object with many levels to it and someone who's ruling it. So anyway, that's one thing. Wet Dry World, then, interestingly enough, I think it features something I think worth noting, which is so we got the wet area of wet, dry land, and then there's this sort of tunnel that leads us to the dry bit. And the dry bit, well, I'm calling it the dry bit, but it's flooded, right? It's this flooded town which you can unflood. That's, of course, interesting immediately because we know that Peach's castle is flooded. So Peach's castle itself, it's not flooded completely, but Peach's castle has flooding on the underground passageways are flooded, right? It seems to have suffered some episode of flooding. So we know that Peach's castle is flooded in some way. Here we get a more literal depiction of flooding, in which inside the we've got this little village here, right? We've got a village under the water. Okay, let's zoom back out. Yes. Now, I'm just going to draw a better picture of that because I'd like to have a clearer thing. Because what's happening here is this. You've got this underground town. There are houses in the town. If I remember correctly, I'll draw the best I can. Okay, you got this central square. I think it has like some sort of a statue in the center. There's a central square and some more buildings. And the town clearly is oriented towards like a raised place here. And then here we have like a central building. Now, you may not agree with me, but I do think that it is organized in this way, in which you got like the peasants down below and the castle up above. It seems to echo the idea of a medieval town where one of the buildings is much more important than all of the others and is set above the others in a more sort of protected and strategic position than the others. This building, of course, is very it's a tiny building, right? It's barely even a building. It barely even has a single room. I think, if I remember correctly, it seems more like a shrine. But I think symbolically it holds this space. It seems more like a chapel or some sort of church. I think it even has, I would have to check, but I think it has some decorative elements that imply maybe some religiosity. I think inside it is also some other kind of statue that could suggest an object of veneration of some kind. Now, of course, we remember that Peach's castle itself, so the whole castle, is fronted by a stained glass mirror with this sort of picture of Peach seemingly sort of praying up into the sky. So that immediately evokes a church, and like the image of someone praying up to the sky with their hands to their chest is a sort of very spiritual kind of image. So Peach's castle is immediately, I mean, that's this stained glass thing is something you would find in a church or a cathedral more than in a castle. At least that's the impression I get. So Peach's castle already blurs the lines between, is it a castle or is it a church? Is it a place of worship? Is it a tomb, right? Is it Big Boo's haunt? Is it a church, as in a place where the dead live? Is it a church, as in a pyramid, a temple, a place of worship? So we have these interlocking themes, right? But then Wet Dry World has all this stuff where you have this element above the rest. So I would claim, at least superficially as a first read of this genre of video, that Wet Dry World also follows this pattern of including at the center of itself, like these other levels, some sort of a big place of worship. And then we got Tick Tock Clock, which doesn't fit. It doesn't exactly fit. But we'll see. We'll see. Because I have an intuition that Tick Tock Clock still is at least following the rules of like a big construction. It's very architectural. It's very similar to Womp's Fortress. Womp's Fortress is also this kind of a place where you got blocks moving in repetitive directions and creating an order. So like Womp's Fortress has all these passageways up to the top that are made of mechanical parts that move. Anyway, so that's a thing, right? We might even say that Big Boo's Haunt and Shifting Sandland have similar themes, in that there are hidden passageways. Big Boo's Haunt has a lot of hidden passageways, which also implies like that in order to move around this castle, you need to shift things around. You need to there are mechanical pieces that you need to move to the left, to the right, or open this door, this other door. It has this aspect to it. Anyway, that's a possibility. And of course, Wet Dry World is entirely hidden. Like this whole place is hidden. So it also has this idea of you need to put the pieces in the right direction in order to even access this space. Anyway, that's one possibility of reading all this. Let's see if I can delete all this for a second. So, oh, great. Okay, first problem of the day. First bug of the day. MS Paint doesn't allow me to go back that much. That's a problem. I should have done this in some other program. Okay, it's okay. So we left with this now. Now, so does this make any sense? Well, actually, I'm going to restart this. Just a second. Okay, I cheated. So, does this make any sense? I'm not sure. Because we do have maybe instances of castles in others. I mean, Bob-omb Fortress, Bob-omb Battlefield, if I wanted to, I could play this game and say that that's a castle, because it also evokes the idea of you got all the soldiers on the lower level, and then you got this big structure that rises up with the big soldier at the top, which is also this sort of medieval village structure. But there is no construction, right? If I were to be a friend to myself and argue in favor of my own hypothesis, I would say, yeah, but King Bob-omb has no castle. He's just standing on the top of a mountain. There's no architecture. Jolly Roger, that's a complicated one. Maybe we'll leave it for later, because there isn't a castle, but there is indeed some sort of an inverted medieval structure where you got like stuff on the shore, and then the thing goes down, and in the ship you get a construction, because a pirate ship is some sort of an architecture. I mean, you have to build something, and there's even a little cabin with windows. So it's a building. It's just a floating building that's sunk down. And is there a boss inside? Well, there's an eel inside. So there is some kind of an, not evil, but some terrifying force inside of the building. So that in some ways does contradict what I'm saying. But let's carry on. In my favor, I would say that it's not an overground building like the others. But still, that's not... First of all, of course, this whole division I'm making between the three levels may not really mean anything. This is just something I'm attempting now. Because, of course, you could say that the sunken ship, with its theme of a sunken ship, a sunken construction, sunken house underwater, it's very similar to Wet Dry World. But anyway, let's continue. So, Cool Mountain, there are buildings, there are wooden huts, but I don't feel they count as like castles with a big sort of spiritual, religious, kingly theme to them. Hazy Maze Cave, the same. We do have like actually similarly to Jolly Roger, which creates an interesting tension between these two. We do have a snake. Hazy Maze Cave has Nessie, which I mean has a body and everything, but the long neck evokes sort of like a big water beast like the eel. At least to me, right? It evokes this idea of like a long water beast that snakes around the waters of Hazy Maze Cave. That's something, right? But there's no castle that I can think of in that way. Die Docks, no castle, but indeed there is a sunken ship. There is a sunken submarine, Bowser's submarine, which sort of evokes the sunken ship in Jolly Roger Lagoon. Different kinds of ship, but still the same thing. It is a naval fortress in some way, so it is a castle. It's a naval castle. But anyway, next two don't really fit that very well. First of all, because Rainbow Ride does indeed have a castle, if I remember correctly. There is an actual, like, a proper sort of magical Disneyland castle in the sky. So, not sure what to make of that. There doesn't seem to be any evil presence in it or a king. It's just this sort of floating magical castle in the sky. That's the final level of the whole game. So make of that what you want, right? I don't know. And Tall Tall Mountain is one of those levels I've never really known what to think about. I really don't know what to think about this level. I know that from a technical perspective, the developers of this game didn't have a lot of time for the levels, and if I remember correctly, the top floor levels, which are these 6. Also, it's interesting how the underground levels are 4, then the middle ground levels are 5, and the overground levels are 6. So it follows this interesting pattern. Anyway, but I seem to remember the developers didn't have a lot of time. They worked so hard on the mechanics of the game and trying to get the game to feel good that a lot of the levels they claimed were left more or less unfinished. And I've always had a suspicion Tall Tall Mountain must be one of them, because it seems like such a sort of meaningless level in some way. I've never understood it. Like, we already have so many of the mechanics of this level, right? It's just a mountain with a spiraling sort of thing that you go up. We've seen that, right? We've seen that here. So, and of course, because of that structure, I've never understood what this level is from a symbolic point of view. All I can see is that it's the most maybe realistic depiction of a mountain, apart from there being, clouds that blow wind at you or talking monkeys and stuff. But it's the most realistic. There's no a giant bomb at the top of the mountain. It's just a plain old mountain. I mean, yeah, there's giant mushrooms. Giant mushrooms giant mushrooms are the symbolic element of this level, because the painting that decorates this level shows a winding path and these big giant mushrooms. So these mushrooms, obviously, they seem to just come from I would like to see maybe a picture of where the stem comes from. They seem to just come from the absolute depths of the sky. Like, the mountain is really, really high up, and these mushrooms have grown from really far below. So maybe that's the theme of this level. Of course, I don't know what the name is in Japanese. That's important to me. But in English, they did translate it as Tall Tall Mountain. So maybe height is a part of this. The height of the mushrooms that are growing from up above, and the height of the mountain itself. Hard to tell what this is, but there is absolutely no castle that I can think of. There's nothing. There's almost no sort of construction of any kind. In fact, it is very animal-centric. You got monkeys, you got moles, you got these big mushrooms. It's a lot of natural life just growing up in this mountain, is the sense I get from this level. I'm not really sure what this level is about. Okay. So I can't find a big theme in these levels, but I would be comfortable claiming, for anyone who wishes to contradict this, I'll just make a claim that, can be contradicted and improved upon. But my first position is that there is no real succulent sort of position about castles in these levels. There are no big castles in the way that I feel there are here. Okay, that's my first claim. What about here? A bit more complicated, maybe, because Tiny Huge Island, I think, would have to correspond to my theme of a castle. It's not an architectural construction, but the inside of the volcano is like the throne room of Wiggler, of the big snake. So first of all, it also messes up some stuff because we got another big snake figure, just like these two levels had snake figures, Jolly Roger and Hazy Maze. We got the big snake, evocative of Bowser, perhaps. If these levels are constantly speaking of this big sort of aquatic dragon-like, snake-like figure, which probably involves Bowser himself as being the central theme. Whoa, weird Bowser, but the central theme of these games. It's interesting also because Bowser, I seem to remember, maybe this is very anecdotal, that Bowser was inspired by Gamera, or that Bowser could have been inspired by Gamera. I think this is maybe just anecdotal urban legend, but I think it's interesting because the developers of Super Mario 64, or just of the original Super Mario Brothers games, I imagine they would have grown up, like their childhoods would have probably been around the time. Obviously, I'm really eyeing this, but the whole era of kaiju movies from the 60s, right, where Ultraman is fighting like the big dragons and stuff. One of the big things that Ultraman fights is Gamera, which is this turtle, fire-breathing turtle with spikes on the shell. Now, I've heard people mention this. I would mention this as well. That just seems to me culturally relevant. If these were really popular TV shows around the time that the creators of the Super Mario show would have maybe been affected by TV, it seems maybe sort of a good possibility. And again, I have a feeling maybe there was some interview where one of the designers said this, but I'm not sure, that Gamera would have been some sort of an inspiration for Bowser, because it's the idea of a villain. So it's Ultraman, this big hero, fighting this turtle with a shelled back and fire breathing, and this sort of mix. It doesn't have horns, but this mix between, you don't know, what is it? Is it a dragon? Is it a turtle? Anyway, I'm going down this rabbit hole, just if you will bear with me for a second, because I've always wanted to think about this. Now, Gamera is, in turn, I think, the creator of Gamera was inspired, I think, by so I think there's this Chinese, I don't know if it has to do with the Chinese zodiac or with the Chinese directions, the four cardinalities. I think each cardinality in, I don't know which spiritual system, each cardinality is associated to a different divine animal. And one of them is like a bird, a dragon, I don't know what the other one is. And one of them is the turtle. And the cardinality of the turtle, of the giant turtle god, that turtle god, I think, gosh, I'm really relying on hearsay for this video, but still, and whoever, you can go and check it out if you're interested, if you want. But I think that the cardinality of water, that turtle in Chinese spirituality, some spiritual tradition in China, I can't remember which, was the inspiration, one of the inspirations for the creator of Gamera to create Gamera. The idea of a big turtle god, let's say, right? And I'm mentioning all this because this turtle god in the Chinese system, if I remember correctly, corresponds to water. Each god corresponded to one of the different four elements, and the turtle corresponds to water. So I'm very intrigued by that because, of course, if that association of water carries back through the ages to Bowser, if we were to allow ourselves to do that, then Bowser is there's several things. First, Bowser has invaded the castle. Bowser has invaded Peach's castle. But see, Peach's castle is flooded. So it feels as if what has invaded the castle is the element of water. Now, Bowser is fire breathing, so that kind of is not really what I'm looking for here. But still, if the main association is to water in some way, then I find it intriguing that in a psychoanalytic sort of way, the castle is invaded by water. So simultaneously, it's invaded by two different representations of the same being. The being is, on the one hand, represented as Bowser, a king, and then on the other, water, just the element of water, has flooded the castle. As I've mentioned in other places, of course, the paintings in this castle are they create a ripple effect when you jump into them, so they are liquid in some way. There's a bit of a liquid consistency to these paintings. So I'm kind of getting carried away here, but the overall picture that I'm interested in is that, again, so we were talking about Tiny Huge Island and these snakes in these different levels. I think that the idea of the snake, the underground snake, the underwater snake invading the castle, is associated to slimy, slithery, wet things invading the castle, which maybe is just associated to liquid itself, water, liquid, and maybe just the element of liquid as something that invades the castle, and we would then have to think, what does it mean for liquid to invade the castle? What does liquid stand for here symbolically, right? In like astrology, it would mean the emotions, but does it mean that in Super Mario 64? I'm not sure. Emotion has invaded the castle. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. That's one way I've been interested in looking at it at different times. But so, yeah, so I feel like maybe these paintings are representing something about the castle that's happening outside of these paintings. These paintings are outside of the castle, outside of the painting. So there's like one world on one side of the painting, another world on the other. And one world seems to represent the other. It feels as if within these paintings, you're constantly getting representations of whatever's happening in the castle. So there is some sort of a space that's being invaded by a big dragon boss of different kinds, the eel, the Nessie, this. Or you get castles or structures that have been flooded by water, and so on, right? So again, this seems to be something that's recurring around these levels, but that's not what we were talking about. We were trying to show whether this column of levels has any references to castles. And I was saying, well, sadly, I think it does, because this is not a castle. Tiny Huge Island is not really a castle per se, but I think that Wiggler presents as some sort of a king. I think they say something like, I'm the king of this, who dares enter into my volcano? And of course, the dragon, that's such a fairy tale thing, right? The dragon guarding the volcano is their castle. So sure, it's not architecture in the human sense, but I feel this could fit my own definition of a castle in some ways. So in that sense, maybe this is a castle. Anyway, okay. Snowman's Land. Is Snowman's Land a castle? That's a tricky one. Snowman's Land is another one of these levels, kind of like Tall Tall Mountain. In fact, they seem to be opposed to each other here, that I don't quite understand, because it's so similar to other stuff. Like we've seen this. Why do we need another snow level? But okay, right? I understand. I haven't explored this level enough, so I'm not entirely sure what the architecture of this level is. I know there's a huge snowman in the center of it. I don't know if I'll be able to. Okay. Yeah, I'll try and erase stuff here. Let's see if I can erase some stuff. Is this good? Yes. Okay. Snowman's Land, we got this huge snowman in the center, who has like a little pine growing out of his head. Okay, sure. See, someone in the comments probably will know to tell me. Like, I'm not sure. Can you enter this snowman? I'm not going to check right now while I'm making the video, but is there architecture inside this snowman? Can you enter? And because I know in this level there is some sort of a crystal maze where there are different like walls of ice, and Mario can get trapped in this crystal maze. I know that that happens here, but I don't know where it happens. If it happens inside the snowman, that's very interesting, because then we got an inverted castle. We've got the boss of the castle is outside of the castle, and the castle is inside of the boss. It does the opposite. Instead of like the boss being inside of the castle, it does like an inversion. That would be interesting. I would like to explore that, if that's what's happening. In any case, you could say maybe that is what's happening at some level, because this is a mountain. It has mountain paths of different kinds, and you need to walk up this mountain and travel along. And there are penguins walking around here and stuff. So it's a mountain slash structure. There are other beings. There are smaller beings living on top of the big being, which evokes tiny, huge island. This sort of tiny things on the big thing, and the relationship between each. But still, so it is some sort of like a structure. There is an architecture to this, but this guy talks, right? He says things. So he is some sort of a being. It's a castle, but it's a person at the same time. Aha, that's interesting, right? That might tell us something about Peach's castle. What is Peach's castle? Is Peach's castle a person? I mean, Peach and the Toads are trapped inside the walls of the castle. So it may seem that Peach is the castle. The castle becomes Peach's flesh. Peach's flesh becomes the walls of the castle until she is renunciated. She's sort of like extracted from the castle, materialized as an actual person. Until before then, she is the castle. So there is a division between castle and person that is not really made. Anyway, so I wonder if that could be said of Snowman's Land as a castle. Well, immediately an interesting theme appears for this column, which is, I mean, isn't this sort of, this is similar to something I was saying about Tiny Huge Island, in that what I'm saying for both of these is, yeah, it's a castle, but, right? Sure, it's kind of a castle, but it sort of breaks the rules in some way. It twists the rules in some way. The rules here being like an architectural, like human building of some kind with a roof or like a pyramid, you know. Like these two depictions of a monarch, if this guy is a monarch, are a little bit strange, a little bit different, let's say, right? Metaphysical in some way. Lethal Lava Land. Well, again, that's interesting because according to this column, Lethal Lava Land also has a volcano. So we also, that's kind of intriguing. This we also have in this column then two depictions of a volcano. Lethal Lava Land has a volcano, and inside the volcano there's this, I think you fight someone with horns, maybe, if I remember correctly. So that may also be a Bowser reference, possibly. It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant at the moment. But we're talking about the castle. So if there is someone living inside the volcano, then it has the same vibe as this level, Tiny Huge Island and Lethal Lava Land. Volcano, someone is inside the volcano. There is some sort of structure inside the volcano that spirals upwards that you can climb up. So, and of course, just the idea of a volcano, a fire-emitting thing. We get two instances of a fire-emitting thing, whereas here we get two instances of pure water. So anyway, make of that what you will. Cool Mountain. Well, yeah, I don't know, right? Seen in this context, I'm not sure what to tell you about that. So, again, I mean, one thing I could say is Bob-omb Battlefield, to me, has always evoked a volcano in some way, because it also has this sort of idea where... Oh, okay, I hit my glasses. Bob-omb Battlefield has got a mountain, and at the top of the mountain you got a bomb. Now, this is very symbolic, I know, But this is a mountain upon which there is a potential explosion. This mountain could have an explosion if this is a bomb, and bombs could explode. Atop this mountain, there could be fire, a fiery explosion, which sort of, to me, evokes a volcano in some way. So we could maybe again get a triplet if we wanted. Oh, not this one. We could be lucky and say that we got a triplet of volcanoes in this side. Well, that's intriguing. I'm not sure if that makes any sense or if that's interesting in any way, but it is intriguing to me. Okay, so I'm not sure what to say about that anymore. But these are some things that you could say. Maybe you could say them about these levels. Maybe a potential division of them into these 3 columns. To be honest, I'm not really that interested. I'm more interested in other ways you could divide these levels. For example, I would like to do more of a horizontal division of these levels and see where that takes us. But still, there's a lot of things you could do with these levels. I want to maybe divide them more into, chop them up into different sections, see what we can see about this game. So yeah, let's just leave it at that. Thanks. That's about enough. Bye.